Welcome back to our daily reflections. Today, we're diving into the remarkable story of Moses, a tale of transformation, humility, and divine leadership. Our focal point is a powerful verse from the book of Numbers. Let's embark on this journey to uncover how Moses, once a prince of Egypt, became the epitome of humility.
Picture Moses as a young prince in Egypt. Raised in the opulence of Pharaoh's palace, he had everything: power, education, and status. But humility? Not quite. One day, he witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. In a fit of rage, Moses killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. He likely thought he was doing the right thing, maybe even that God approved of his actions. But as we know, God's plans for us are often beyond our immediate understanding. This impulsive act of justice led Moses to flee into the wilderness, where he would spend the next 40 years. Imagine that: 40 years in the desert, herding sheep, living a life far removed from the grandeur of the palace. It was here, in the solitude of the wilderness, that Moses began to transform. During these years, Moses learned invaluable lessons. He learned that true leadership is not about exerting power, but about serving with humility and patience. This period of reflection and growth was crucial. God was preparing Moses for a greater mission, but first, Moses needed to become the humblest man on earth. When God finally called Moses from the burning bush, Moses was no longer the impulsive prince. He had been refined through years of hardship and reflection. He was ready to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, not with an iron fist, but with a gentle, humble spirit. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever faced a situation where you acted impulsively, thinking you were doing the right thing, only to realize later that a different approach was needed? Moses' story reminds us that growth often comes through trials, and that humility is forged in the fires of experience. As we continue, consider how Moses' journey from the palace to the wilderness parallels our own spiritual journeys. We all have moments of pride and moments of humility. It's in recognizing these moments and learning from them that we grow closer to God. Imagine Moses, now an older man, tending his flock in the wilderness. One day, he sees a bush that is on fire but not consumed by the flames. Curious, he approaches, and God speaks to him from the bush, calling him to lead his people out of Egypt. Moses' response is one of awe and humility. He removes his sandals, recognizing that he is standing on holy ground. This encounter is a turning point in Moses' life. God reveals his plan for Moses, and despite Moses' initial hesitation, he accepts the call. It's important to note that Moses' humility didn't mean he was without doubts. He questioned his own abilities, saying, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" But God's reassurance and promise to be with him gave Moses the courage to move forward. Here, we see that humility isn't about thinking less of oneself, but rather thinking of oneself less. Moses was focused on God's mission and the well-being of his people, not on his own pride or abilities. This brings us to a crucial aspect of humility: trusting in God's plan and recognizing that our strength comes from him. Moses' humility allowed him to rely on God's power rather than his own. This is a lesson for all of us. True strength and leadership come from a place of humility and reliance on God. As Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, he faced numerous challenges. The journey was fraught with difficulties, from the complaints of the people to the threat of Pharaoh's army. Yet, through it all, Moses remained steadfast and humble, always turning to God for guidance. One of the most dramatic moments was the parting of the Red Sea. Trapped between the sea and Pharaoh's advancing army, the Israelites were terrified. But Moses, trusting in God's promise, stretched out his hand over the sea, and the waters parted, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. This miracle not only demonstrated God's power, but also highlighted Moses' faith and humility. He didn't boast of his own abilities. Instead, he continually pointed the people to God as their deliverer. Throughout their journey in the wilderness, Moses faced the constant challenge of leading a large, often rebellious group of people. Yet, his humility shone through in his patience and perseverance. When the people grumbled about food and water, Moses turned to God, seeking solutions rather than asserting his own authority. This reliance on God for provision is another key lesson in humility. Moses understood that he was merely an instrument of God's will, and he constantly sought God's guidance in meeting the needs of the people. Let's take a moment to consider our own lives. How often do we try to solve problems on our own, relying on our own strength and wisdom? Moses' example teaches us the importance of seeking God's guidance and trusting in his provision, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. One of the most poignant examples of Moses' humility is seen in his response to the episode of the golden calf. While Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving the Ten Commandments, the Israelites grew impatient and created a golden calf to worship. When Moses descended the mountain and saw the idol, he was filled with righteous anger. Yet his response was not one of self-righteous indignation but of intercession. Moses pleaded with God to forgive the people, even offering to have his own name blotted out from God's book if it would save them. This selfless act of intercession is a powerful demonstration of humility. Moses was willing to sacrifice his own standing with God for the sake of the people. He put their needs and God's mercy above his own. In our own lives, we may face situations where we need to stand in the gap for others, seeking forgiveness and reconciliation. Moses' example challenges us to approach such situations with humility and selflessness, prioritizing the well-being of others and the will of God. As we reflect on this, let's consider how we can intercede for others in our prayers and actions. How can we show humility and compassion, even when others have wronged us or acted foolishly? Now, let's bring these lessons into our daily lives. Whether you're a parent, a community leader, or someone striving to live a life of faith, Moses' journey offers timeless lessons. First, if someone disrespects you, don't let pride take over. Proverbs 15 verse 1 teaches us, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Responding with kindness and humility can diffuse conflict and promote peace. Second, be quick to admit your mistakes. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 9 and 20 remind us that no one is without sin and that harboring anger only leads to more harm. Acknowledging our faults and seeking forgiveness is a sign of true strength and humility. Third, follow God's guidance in resolving issues. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 encourages us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. In all our ways, we should submit to Him, and He will make our path straight. Lastly, show gentleness in your responses. Colossians 3 verse 12 tells us to clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. These qualities are the hallmarks of a humble and godly life. By embodying these principles, we not only follow in the footsteps of Moses, but also reflect the character of Christ. Our actions and attitudes can be a powerful testimony to those around us, pointing them to the transformative power of God's grace. As we conclude today's reflection, let's take a moment to ponder this question. Think about the relationships and situations you are currently navigating. How can you respond to humility, seek God's guidance, and show compassion to others? Remember, true humility isn't about diminishing your worth, but about recognizing your dependence on God and valuing others above yourself. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on this topic. Please leave a comment below, sharing how you plan to incorporate humility into your daily life. Your experiences can inspire others and create a rich discussion within our community. Thank you so much for joining us today. May the humility of Moses inspire you to live a life of service, compassion, and faith. Until next time, stay blessed and keep reflecting.